Let's start with you, Mark. Welcome back to Norwich. You've been here
Thank you.
14 months, and this was an AGM that's just happened. How's the first 14 months been involved with Norwich City?
It's been a little bit of a whirlwind. I was actually at the AGM last year, so this is my second. Not a rookie anymore. And look, among many things, we heard some frustrations tonight, and it's a reminder of how difficult it is to succeed in sports. But we have a huge amount of opportunity in front of us. And one of the things I learned from Commissioner Seelig when I first bought the Brewers was it's never as bad as you think it is when it's bad. It's never as good as you think it is when it's good. So it's not as bad as everybody thinks it is now. But and we all share the frustration. We all want to win every match, and we will start doing better.
It's yet to be fully rubber stamped, but hopefully in time you will be the co-majority shareholder with Delia and Michael. How's it been working with Delia and Michael? Well, we're waiting for it to be rubber stamped.
Yeah, one more regulatory. There's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. We've been working. We've been working in partnership really from the very beginning. I mentioned inside, Delia and Michael have been wonderful stewards here for 28 years, and I've learned a lot from them. It's not only about English football, but about life, and it's a blessing for me to be able to work with them.
You were at Watford the other night, as were 1,300 odd Norwich fans, lots watching at home, listening on the radio as well. That was a really difficult night for Norwich City, wasn't it? What did you make of it?
It was a difficult night. The first 26 minutes were pretty special, and the next 50 plus minutes were pretty awful. And but when you have a game like that in any sport, interestingly, I don't, and I'm not just being humble. I don't know much about this sport, but all of our deficiencies in this club were laid bare that night. And frankly, it's not just the coaching. It's somewhat uniquely British, if not all European football, to say, coach out. And we've had, so I've been here, we said 14 months, but in just about 2 years, you've had 3 coaches. That is not something you see in American sports. By the way, in American business, if you have 3 CEOs in 2 years, that's not really a prescription for success. That's frankly a sign of knee-jerk reactions. So I think we should all give Ben a chance to assess things and make moves that are going to be strategic and work at least in the middle term, if not the long term. And I'm convinced he'll make the right decisions.
We'll speak to Delia and Michael in just a moment, but I just want to get your take on lots of fans phoning our phone-ins and talk to us about how they don't think David Wagner is the man to take this forward. What would you say to that?
Yeah, is that the Canary call?
That's Canary
All
call.
right. I was going to try to call in that. I watch every match that I'm not at. I think we leave it to Ben. We haven't really talked about this. I think we reviewed over 20 candidates. We interviewed 10. We interviewed probably 8 more than once. I personally participated in 2 or 3 interviews with Ben and a couple of the other finalists. He was extremely well vetted, and he was at Arsenal for 14 years. He's seen the best of the best for 14 years, and he's going to bring that here. He's also, very bright, which I think came through tonight.
And just final question, it's the best part of 3 years that obviously you're going to be kind of with Delia and Michael. Is your intention to be the full owner after that? What does those after the 3 years hold?
So we had an interesting conversation this summer over drinks, and Delia said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said to Delia, "Well, what do you and Michael want me to do?" And we'll just work on that together. So I think we decided, in Delia's words, I was going to have a think on it. I'm definitely interested in getting more involved. I've been getting more involved, and I think I can help in several areas.
And you got your son here as well.
My son Mike's here. There he is over there. My son Mike.
Hello, Mike. And he's obviously involved as well because he wants to be with his dad and help out.
He knows a little bit about analytics, and one of the things we're going to try to do is build an analytics system here that we own all the proprietary data in. Right now, we already are using. We have some, and we're using third-party sources. We don't really like to talk about that because we like to keep it confidential. And besides, which I was saying in another regard tonight, I could talk about all the things we're doing qualitatively to succeed here. But when you lose 3-2 and you've given up three goals without, nobody wants to hear about the analytics system you're building. But the analytics system we're building is going to help us be consistent and succeed in the future.
Thanks, Mark. Let's just talk to Delia and Michael now. Delia, how excited are you to have Mark Attanasio on board?
Very, very excited. And I have to praise Stuart and Zoe for when Michael Fulger wanted to sell his shares, for having the sort of the intelligence and the nous to say, right, let's go out and find some investment. And they did find investment, and we had, I think, 4 people on the list. And we looked at it all very, very carefully, and we chose Mark.
Don't worry, it was a no-brainer, Mark.
That was a no-brainer. And then Mark came over, and we just all got on so well. But also, the other thing that we've gained is somebody with the experience of another sport. So it's just really, and as he's saying with Mike and the analytical, I mean, Stuart was so excited about that because, we've learned a lot from that. And so it's just good to sort of share, what we've had together. And we've been here 28 years as board directors. We've never had any investment whatsoever from Norfolk other than Mike Fulger. So we're very happy to have somebody from America.
Michael, let me ask you, where do you stand on matters on the pitch at the minute? It was a difficult game the other night, and clearly there's pressure from the fans on David Wagner. What do you make of that?
I think basically it's a lack of consistency. I mean, we've shown, as you were saying, the first 20 minutes we were brilliant at Watford, and when we came back from 2-1 down at Cardiff, we played really well. We have the capability there, and I think individually we've got the players, but they make mistakes. I don't know how you eliminate them. Yes, it is up to the manager to do that. But given a bit of consistency, we can still be a very good side.
Do you still believe that Norwich can get amongst those playoffs this season with David Wagner in charge?
Why not? We're only 6 points out of it. Yeah, why not?
Okay, you're optimist. And Delia, I wanted to talk to you about the fans. You spoke about it in the AGM, and you got quite animated about how the fans are negative. Just tell us a bit about that.
Well, no, they're not. I said 80% of our footballers are the best supporters in the world, and I always believe that. And, it's very unfair to say we don't relate to them, because every away match, I go and see supporters. And home matches now, we've got the Lion and Castle, we're able to, both of us go and relate to them, and that's been a real joy for us. So, I forgot what you asked me.
Well, no, it's just that you were talking about them being negative, and you're making an omelette and you don't want to get booed and stuff.
I feel really, really strongly. I was a footballer and I walked out on that pitch with all that negativity. I wouldn't be able to play. I wouldn't. And I remember the days when we used to go to Portsmouth, and Portsmouth would cheer their team. If they were losing 6-0, Portsmouth would be cheering and driving their team on. And to have that negativity, which all the good people there, all the people who are supporters, they get sort of overwhelmed by this sort of, the boo boys have the loudest voices. Okay, we got 20% whingers, we got 80% fantastic supporters, and I love them dearly.
Just final question from me then. I mean, obviously the results haven't been there for Norwich fans, and that's probably why we've seen it to be quite negative in here. Do you think David Wagner is the man to turn this round? Can he get Norwich winning again?
I have no crystal ball. I have no idea at all. I do not know. I know that football goes up, football comes down, and I think Mark is surprised at our keep changing managers. My dream is to have a manager long term, so I hope he's right. That's all I can say.
Thanks to all of you. I'll throw it to these boys.
Yeah, I guess if we pick it up in terms of the strategic elements that you were speaking a little bit about, Mark, I think there has been some concern from fans about long-term visions and long-term pictures. I mean, I guess part of that is part of this ownership dynamic that is playing out. In terms of that kind of 3-year transition, I think it's quite interesting to talk about how that came about. I guess from both sides' perspectives, was that kind of a mutual thing to agree in terms of it was relatively easy? How did you decide upon that?
It was certainly relatively easy. I'm trying to remember even one or the other of us suggested, and we said, "Well, that sounds
I think
good."
we had quite a lot to drink on that occasion.
But I think we're incredibly lucky. We're very lucky because people get owners coming in from nowhere. They don't know what they're going to do, and suddenly, if you take Everton Football Club, it was one of the best run clubs, best chief executive, wonderful owner, and they might not have been the most successful, but they were a very well run club. In came the money, and then what happened? What happened when the money came in?
Well, it is interesting. You mentioned money. You had a fair few questions about the accounts tonight, and I guess relating to self-funding. How do you see that? Is it an evolution now in terms of the way the football club is run from this kind of self-funding element? You're obviously quite wealthy, Mark. Is there that element now because there has been, I don't want to say a dependence, but there has been kind of more external loans coming from yourself. Do you see that kind of outlook shifting slightly more towards external investment?
So we, first of all, relative to that the loans that came from us, we look at as self-funding, and one of the things Delia and I were talking about after the meeting was the plan is to still be self-funded. We need to get a plan from Ben as to what he wants to achieve. We also had some meetings today on how to expand the stadium, how to expand the training grounds, and all of that requires capital. And frankly, if you're going to try to shift the roster in any way, whether in this case Ben's talking about younger, but that's going to require some capital. So we're going to just put a list down of everything we want to achieve, and then we're going to prioritize. And self-funding is the best program because it keeps us in control. Mm-hmm. Once you bring in third parties, it depends on the structure. So if we had, we're not really looking for big loans from other parties because then they have that hammer on you. In terms of equity investments, if you had a passive partner who would provide a lot of capital on a very long-term basis, like 15 plus years, we would consider it in the context of what was best for this franchise to make sure that we retain control. And that's not like some control obsession. That's remember there's an old American politician, Alexander Haig, who when he was getting pressures like Secretary of State, something he said, Michael's a historian, was he the Secretary of State but he goes, I'm in charge. That's not what we're talking about. Delia and Michael in particular know what's best for this community. I view some of the passion and frustration we saw tonight. That shows that they care. What you don't want is people coming in and just not asking any questions because they don't care. So we want to keep control of what goes on in this community, and this organization is critically important what they do with the foundation, and to provide something to look forward to every week.
I think you have to be careful the supporters have to be careful what they wish for. Mm-hmm. It's all very well having somebody with loads of money who comes in and knows nothing and wants to change the back four and can because he's got all the say. I mean, you have to really look at it like that. And my ambition really for this club, which I achieved once and I haven't achieved it since, is to not have any debt. Because Michael and I spent all those years, all we did was firefight debt. Year after year after year after year. And the day that David McNally came up to us and said, got good news for you, we don't have any more debt, was probably the best moment in my tenure here.
Absolutely. And Mark, in terms of, obviously you've been through this transition before in terms of baseball. Have you found the two similar in terms of stepping into baseball and stepping into football? Have they been comparable in terms of your experiences over the last few years?
You know, yes and no in terms of comparison. It starts with the relegation and promotion. While I don't know English football or football generally, I know sport. I would know exactly what to do if there was not a risk of relegation in terms of turning this around, or the current trough around the same way we did by the way, this is like a 2-year trough. We had 26 years without being in the playoffs in Milwaukee.
We've had a few like that too.
But you have to make sure that you at a minimum or staying competitive in the league we're in, and so that's very different. But a lot of the challenges we face are the same challenges, just a different sport. And we have an entire management team in Milwaukee who's assisting the management team here on not on sporting matters, but on everything else.
And I guess for both of you, really, you kind of touched upon maybe fans' concerns specifically around David Wagner. I think there has been some concerns in terms of long term, and there's been some concerns in terms of governance over the last few years. What reassurance would you give to those supporters that the team that you have at the moment, in terms of board level, are the correct people and the right people in terms of leading the club forward?
Could you elaborate what you mean by worrying about governance over the last few years?
I think there's been some fans who would maybe look at the previous sporting director. The fact he's been married to someone on the board. That has been a concern. That's just one example. I think there've been others as well in terms of perhaps the structure and perhaps responsibility maybe for who kind of takes what decision as well. I mean, what would you kind of say to reassure those concerns? Like, except maybe that there's
I'd just say to you, you have no idea. You
I
have
just
no
don't
idea
recognise what you're talking about, to be
whatever
honest.
of the work that's gone into this football club. That's what I'd say to them. You have no idea.
I know you spoke on a podcast, I think, about some of the and it kind of touched upon, I guess, the negativity. But I guess how does that shift? Because there is this kind of, and I know you've spoken about maybe a base of negativity, but do you feel there needs to be some, I don't want to say repair because that feels too dramatic, but does there need to be some, is it as simple as winning games?
I think we need the drummer back.
Yeah, I agree.
We just need the drummer back. It's a bit like church mice, isn't it, sometimes? There's not a sound anywhere. But I still think the majority of people, all the supporters I meet at away matches, at home matches, whom, unlike the questionnaire that said, the board don't engage, one of the stewards came up to me and said, they don't see you, Delia, they don't see you with the supporters, which is all a load of rubbish. Mm-hmm. So, I still think that we have the best supporters in the world, but we have 10, 20% of whingers, and part of being on the board is living with the whingers.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of life as well, isn't it?
Yeah, part of
to
life.
some extent.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
everywhere you go, wherever you go. Yeah.
I did want to ask you a little bit, and you kind of touched upon the sporting director process, but about, I guess, Stuart Webber and kind of your reflections on his time at the football club, but also about Ben as well, because it feels like a new chapter in terms of that. So I guess a little reflection on Stuart's time, but also maybe what you saw in Ben, as you mentioned there were a few finalists, but what made him maybe stand out from the crowd that you spoke to.
He was outstanding. I can only use that word because I've been 28 years. You weren't born.
I wasn't, no.
Oh my gosh.
I've been here 28 years. I've seen it all. I've seen chief executives, I've seen head of academies, I've seen everything. But that man has done more for this football club than I could have ever dreamt of. He's been fantastic. Where else would you get a top striker for nothing? Where would you get a player like Ben Deer for tuppence halfpenny? He went to football every night looking at players. He worked his socks off. And I don't know what went wrong. I do remember that one day there was a demonstration outside the director's room and Stuart went out to it and he had no idea. He said he'd never heard language in his life like that. And okay, the relationship broke down after that moment. But be rest assured, I have all the experience and he was outstanding. Moving on to the second stage, I can't believe that we've got somebody so good as Ben now as well. I never thought, wow, we'd get, looks like the same again.
Yeah, and just finally, Mark, from me, but you've spoken about data and analysis. He comes from a very data background. Was that kind of in your thinking in terms of profile of candidate?
So what we did, I mentioned we looked at over 20 candidates, and we had a range of candidates. We had a candidate who was expert in running an academy. We had, I'd say, Ben, who probably was most expert in data and in loan management, and he talked a lot today about a trading player paradigm. And there's several examples of clubs like this, similarly situated, who do quite well and stay in the Premier League running an effective, player trading program. So that was another paradigm. We looked at candidates who had broad experience in major football assemblages from almost like a CEO level, who probably would have had to hire down someone. We had candidates who were scrappy, and maybe like you saw, you see, you would have tried to do what Ipswich has done, interestingly, who were from lower level clubs that had a lot on, maybe would be the next star. Stuart Webber, by the way, I'll mention. There's all these qualitative things he did here too, and Delia's talked about where that training center and a practice center, unbelievable. He had started a data analytics thing here, just didn't get 4 or 5 and was using data. And by the way, I think one of the reasons that with Delia and Michael, I came to their attention is, we had Mike and I and another colleague was supposed to be an hour call with management here. It was over 90 minutes with Stuart asking a lot of the questions. So I probably should give him some. I never really was going to ask him, well, how did you all pick me? But he was leading the questions in that interview. So he was, very forward-looking. And listen, it's really hard in sports to. He had an amazing run here. It's hard to maintain that. I do want to mention something else relative to decision structures and board structures. So Crescent is a partnership. There's 2 of us who are managing partners, but we have collegial decision making. We have an executive committee. I look at the way this board operates the same way. It's a collegial process. Some investors or companies want a CEO, and for those companies it works. I was reading some comments Elon Musk was making today. There's one decision maker in his company. That's not how I've run Crescent, and that's not how Delia and Michael have run things. So that's one of the reasons we were a good match, because we both come from collaborative backgrounds. It's just a different way to do things. We haven't had one. We have some active conversations at the board. We haven't had one non-unanimous vote yet.
That's pretty well true over 28 years, actually. I can think of one vote we ever had.
I always dreamed of collaborative leadership because, perhaps of my experience in the past, I never thought I would meet someone else who's felt exactly the same way.
Thank you.
Just a few from me, as I know time's tight, but I was going to ask you that, Mark. I mean, you are like the face, you're Mark Attanasio who's come in, but is it fair for supporters maybe to see it more of a group of investors who have got involved that you're kind of leading? Would it be fair to say?
Well, probably somewhere in between that. So I've got the team investing in this, and the reason I do is I have a number of our executives who are assisting in a variety of things, primarily financial, legal, and data driven, and not that they have full staff here, but sports has become a big business. Even smaller companies is part of a bigger business. It's not what it was 20 years ago when I first bought the Brewers. So I thought what was most fair to our investors at the team was if executives were going to be working on this, that the team should have an ownership interest, and my partners there would have an ownership interest indirectly through the brewers. Then there's a third, then I'm investing, and then I have a third partner. His name is Richard Ressler. He runs CIM Group. He is a private equity real estate professional. We were college roommates, and there's any number of development opportunities around Norwich, the stadium, that would be real estate related. And then you see across sports, infrastructure investments around sporting organizations is a big way to maybe drive revenues and therefore better perform on the field. So that's the group. We have a small friends and family group. This is maybe more detail than I should give. Where
Keep going.
people can, and nobody's getting charged a fee or anything like that, where they bring expertise in a variety of things we think we would need. But not. And after saying I'm not a Al Haig or control freak, on both investments I have sole control, because I can't go take a poll every time we want to do something. If Delia and I are talking about something, or Stuart was calling me on some of the signings. He's up at midnight at the transfer window, making decisions and wanting to know, since we are helping to fund those decisions, if I'm okay with it. If I have to go say, hold on, let me go call 5 investors or 1 investor, it doesn't work. And some of the best things that we've done for the Brewers have been done where I've had to make a decision in an hour. And that regards player acquisition. So you have to sort of, you have to have control, but you have to communicate well, so that you try not to have any surprises for anybody.
Just to want to ask, I mean, it's 14 months, I think, since you've been here, signed on the board. Maybe 18 months since you came down for the Spurs game that was in the Premier League. Is there one thing that, having this journey with soccer now, that resonates with you, that you've learned, that is the biggest takeaway? Something that you...
Oh, the energy is unbelievable. You can't believe, you try to get a sense of time. When you have a 1-goal lead, the clock does not move fast enough.
And when you're one down,
And
it
when you're
goes
one down,
really slow.
Yeah.
We started getting some momentum at the end of the at the end of the Watford game, and the clock is we're already 3 minutes into the 4 minutes of stoppage time.
There's never enough added time.
The passion, there's really nothing like it, and that's been my biggest takeaway.
Delia, Mike, if I can ask you about Stuart, it must have been really tough when it came to the point of him actually leaving.
Yeah.
How hard was that moment compared to
It's very
28
hard.
years?
It's very hard, but in all honesty, when we interviewed Stuart for the job here, Michael and I, he told us, he said, it won't be forever, because I want to work in Spain, I want to work in Germany, so we knew it was coming. We always knew it was coming. And when he wanted to climb Everest, we thought, oh, well, he's only having the time off that he was owed anyway. So we thought, oh, we've got him till he climbs Everest. So, yeah, we were devastated.
Do you see a situation where he's still involved? I mean, obviously there was going to be a long handover, wasn't there? Initially, it was like your notice period was until March. Is it like over-ended, or is he still available to you if you need him?
Yeah, he's a huge friend.
Yeah, so I imagine in a highly unofficial capacity, if we asked him a question, he'd give us his professional answer. But
And the same with Ben.
Yeah,
Ben has access to him all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
He's still under contract through the end of March.
Yeah.
And look, Stuart was the one who came to us and said, look, if I'm in the building, everyone's going to keep coming to me and not going to Ben, and they have to go to Ben. So it was Stuart's idea to move out of the building.
No, that's grand. I reckon I've got one more in. I mean, it's fair to say, Delia, Michael, you now can foresee the moment where you're not custodians of the club.
Of
Essentially, you
course.
can see that. And
You only look at our age.
but I mean, for you to, I can't imagine what that'd be like for you to see that. And also, do you hope that Tom will be still a longer term part of the club?
Well, all we want is the best for our football club, with us or without us. As long as we get the very best we can get for our football club. Because at heart, we're just both supporters, really. We're both passionate supporters, and all we want is the very best for our football club, and we hope that we can achieve that.
Even if we've got to go back and stand at the river end.
Is that where you choose to
Where-
get to?
where I started.
They've got
That's
seats
where
now,
we
Michael.
started.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we started. But I have to tell you, we do still have our season tickets.
Yeah, we've still got the
We
tickets.
still got them. We give them to other people to use. But when we first became board directors, we said, let's keep them in case we don't like being board directors. Do you remember?
Yeah, it's a long time
So we
ago.
still got our season tickets in the county stand.
Fantastic. Hey, so you did enjoy being board members then, you
Yeah.
see. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you very